The dominant narrative is kinetic, hypersonic threats, swarming drones. This is a deliberate and effective misdirection. While Pentagon planners grapple with the unsustainable economics of missile defense, a problem codenamed Golden Dome, they are focused on the wrong vector. The kinetic cost is the distraction. The crippling blow is non-kinetic. The real war is being waged in absolute silence. The primary strategic target is not a carrier group. It is the flow of data. The entire Western military economic complex runs on a fragile nervous system of undersea fiber optic cables and orbital satellites. According to analysts at CSIS, precision strikes against these nodes require no invasion, no declaration of war. Cut the cables, and you sever Wall Street from global liquidity. Blind the satellites, and a multi-trillion-dollar military loses its eyes and ears. This protocol is designed to induce a state of strategic paralysis, a nation with overwhelming conventional power that is rendered deaf, dumb, and blind. This is the blind Leviathan scenario. It possesses unmatched military hardware, but lacks the sensory input and command and control functions to deploy it. Its warships are adrift without targeting data. Its F-35s are grounded without network-centric links. A blinded state cannot assess damage, intent, or scale. It cannot differentiate between a limited attack and a systemic decapitation strike. In this induced fog of war, the strategic playbook shrinks to a single protocol: launch on warning. The ultimate asymmetric leverage is not destroying a target, but creating a condition of absolute uncertainty where the adversary is forced to make a terminal decision based on zero information. The motive is not conquest, it is survival. Protracted kinetic conflict is, by definition, a solvency crisis. Authoritative analysis from CSIS indicates the Kremlin views a long conventional war as a terminal domestic liability, an unsustainable drain on state resources that risks internal destabilization. When a nation's ledger bleeds faster than its enemies, its strategy must pivot. This is not a failure of their system. It is a calculated feature of their new doctrine. If you cannot win a symmetric war of attrition, you redefine the battlefield to your opponent's primary weakness, their balance sheet. The objective shifts from destroying tanks to destroying economic capacity. Weakness forces a pivot to asymmetry. The primary vector for this attack is industrial attrition. It targets the foundational pillars of a war economy. As reports on Europe's aluminum production collapse confirm, energy has been successfully weaponized to deindustrialize the continent's manufacturing base. Concurrently, U.S. energy security policy is being stress-tested by volatility in the uranium market, a direct threat to national power generation and naval readiness. This strategy creates a lethal economic exchange ratio. As Pentagon documents on missile defense economics reveal, the kinetic cost is inverted. The West is forced to expend multi-million-dollar interceptors against low-cost, mass-produced drones. This is not a military fight. It is an exercise in applied economics. The goal is to make defense mathematically insolvent. The endgame is to shrink the West's strategic playbook until only one option remains. By engineering a systemic solvency crisis, adversaries ensure that the capacity to wage or even afford a conventional war is liquidated. When the industrial base is gone and the treasury is empty, the doctrine of flexible response collapses. The board is cleared for a launch on warning protocol, not by choice, but by economic necessity. The math of modern warfare is the primary weapon. According to analysts at RUSI, the kinetic cost exchange is now the central battlefield. An adversary can deploy a suicide drone for approximately $500. The asset it is targeting, a main battle tank, costs $5 million. This is not a sustainable economic model for defense. It is a blueprint for national insolvency. This creates an asymmetric liability. For every high-cost defensive interceptor fired, the adversary can launch a dozen low-cost threats. The objective is not to win a single engagement, but to force a systemic solvency crisis where the cost to defend exceeds the West's capacity to produce and to pay. The Pentagon is already confronting these exact missile defense economics. The adversary's goal is to make defense mathematically impossible. This principle is known as the democratization of violence. Cheap, accessible, and lethal technology has collapsed the barrier to entry for projecting power. It allows smaller state and non-state actors to inflict strategic, treasury-draining damage on a superpower. By targeting the industrial base, aluminum, uranium, energy security, the adversary ensures we can't even produce the expensive assets while they mass-produce the cheap threats. It's economic attrition, engineered to bleed a nation's power without a single peer-to-peer battle. The regional instability you are being shown is not a symptom of global chaos. It is a laboratory. These territories are not failing states. They are designated gray zones, deliberately selected as staging grounds for economic attrition. CSIS and RUSI analyses confirm this model. These zones serve as proxy laboratories where strategic supply chains can be severed with plausible deniability. The collapse of Europe's aluminum production was not an accident of energy prices. It was a successful test run. The blueprint is ruthlessly efficient. Inject an accelerant, political turmoil, logistical disruption into a key resource-producing region. The vector of attack is not military. It is the supply contract. The target is solvency. This creates the core asymmetric liability. As our industrial base is hollowed out by engineered scarcity, adversaries consolidate their logistical footprint. The docking of the USS Cincinnati at a Chinese-funded Cambodian naval base is not a courtesy call. It is a statement of access. They secure assets while we liquidate them. The Pentagon is now forced to confront the brutal economics of missile defense, as reported by Space News. A high kinetic cost is unsustainable without an industrial base. This isn't a mistake. It's a feature of the attrition protocol. When you can no longer afford to build the shield, your strategic options shrink to one. The final failsafe is a doctrine known as launch-on warning. It is not a strategy of strength. It is a protocol of desperation, triggered by a solvency crisis. According to analysts at CSIS, the doctrine dictates that if reliable sensors detect an incoming nuclear strike, a nation launches its own missiles before the incoming warheads can impact and destroy its retaliatory capability. You do not absorb the first hit. You cannot afford to. When your industrial base has been hollowed out, as seen in the collapse of Europe's aluminum production, and your energy security is compromised, rebuilding is a mathematical impossibility. The protocol becomes absolute. This creates the ultimate asymmetric liability. An adversary does not need to launch a physical missile. They only need to create the illusion of one. A sophisticated cyber attack, a vector of warfare with near-zero kinetic cost, can blind or spoof the satellite and radar arrays that form the backbone of early warning systems. This is the fog of digital war. The commander in the bunker is now deaf and blind. The data stream is dead. Is it a system failure, or is it the prelude to decapitation? He has minutes to decide. Waiting for verification could mean his nation ceases to exist. Launching could trigger global annihilation based on a ghost in the machine. But the Pentagon is already confronting unsustainable missile defense economics. The cost to intercept is now vastly higher than the cost to attack. The system cannot afford to be wrong. This is the checkmate. Economic attrition forces a reliance on launch on warning. Cyber warfare then exploits that reliance. The commander is not making a choice. He is executing a pre-programmed response to a scenario engineered by an adversary decades in advance. Fear forces his hand when economics have already broken his back. This isn't war, it's systemic liquidation. Adversaries understand that a solvency crisis is more decisive than a kinetic victory. The playbook has shifted from targeting hardware to targeting the economic and industrial architecture that underpins it. Reports from CSIS and analysis of Europe's aluminum production collapse confirm the primary vector: deliberate, systemic economic attrition. Within the next 12 months, expect a calibration shot. It will not be a missile. It will be an attribution impossible, systemic paralysis of a strategic deep-water port on the U.S. West Coast. The event will manifest as a cascading failure of the terminal operating system, the software that manages cranes, containers, and ground logistics. It will be officially diagnosed as a catastrophic IT failure with no identifiable state actor. This is not an act of war, it is a data-gathering exercise. The objective is to measure the precise rate of economic bleed and test the political paralysis when no clear enemy can be blamed. It is a low-cost probe designed to validate the central thesis. The asymmetric liability of our high-cost defense systems, as noted in the Golden Dome analysis, is irrelevant if the nation can no longer afford to operate the port that supplies the factory that builds the missile. The shot will confirm the pathway to forcing a launch-on-warning posture through economic strangulation.